Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Spiceworld from 1997 or 98, depends on how you feel about it. And this is a winner of my Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. And this movie was selected by Austin. This was kind of the, culmination peak of the Spice Girls' popularity, particularly in America. And I guess at first was annoyed by them when I was a kid, but I've kind of come around because my kids watch it and it's like a fun sleepover movie for little girls. It's not that much to get upset about. To be perfectly honest, I do think people, especially at the time, were too hard on this movie. But it's sort of just a fun, silly movie for Spice Girl fans, and not to overrate it, because I do think it's very simply directed. It's obviously done very quickly and things like that. It does have a sort of like fun charm to it that a lot of stuff like this at the time doesn't. I think that's because the personality of the different Spice Girls, had they not had such fun personalities and distinct personalities, I don't think this would really work as well as it does when it does. But it's sort of just a silly lark of a thing that has probably too many interesting people in it. It's pretty shocking. I mean, beyond the Spice Girls, you have like Richard E. Grant, Alan Cummings. I think this is the only other time, and I didn't look this up, that Richard E. Grant and Meatloaf were in a movie together that's not Rocky Horror. I'm pretty certain. I don't know. I can't think of another one. You had Mark McKinney from The Kids in the Hall. You had Roger Moore. You had George Wendt from Cheers. Pretty good supporting cast, honestly, and I'm a little surprised that they had this in it. I think this movie works best when it's just the girls having fun, bouncing off of each other. All they're kind of like, it does have a continuous thing of like, Alan Cummings following them as a documentary crew. They have their manager, played by Richard E. Grant. It's like, oh, you stuffy shirts, well, we're the Spice Girls, we're a lot of fun, and you guys are not fun. I think it works well for like the kind of movie it is, but they do it so much you wonder if they have like some issues with that. I know critically the Spice Girls were not the most beloved at the time, and I kind of think that reflects in the plot of this movie that comes up too much, that I was like, at first when I thought about it, I was like, I'm probably projecting, and then I was like, I mean, if you guys would stop saying it so much, I would stop thinking that that's what you're talking about. This has a million cameos as well and all those things. Basically what this film is it's for little girls and at the time, and kids who are really into the Spice Girls. That's what this movie aimed to be. I think they knew it would get rented like crazy because of their popularity. It hits that bar that it's supposed to, and in my mind, that's like the success of this. Now, when I was watching this, and I think people are too critical of it, I think one of the things with the Spice Girls and media at the time that sort of changed is that in particular, people go, oh, people hate things that teenage girls like. And I think part of it, that is definitely true. But I also think it's because, if you turn on MTV, they were always there. Like, they were always on in heavy rotation, whether you liked it or not. So if you wanted to watch MTV, if you wanted to read the paper in the music section, they were just everywhere. And that was pretty much, the monoculture of the time of how media was consumed. And if you were into like music or MTV or things like that, and you wanted to engage with it, you had to deal with them, whether you liked it or not. And because of the repetition, there's a good chance that if you were not their target demo, then you were kind of, not going to be happy about that. So I remember not being happy about this when it opened. I thought it was really stupid. It's like in middle school. It did open second to Titanic in America in 98. That's why I said 97 or 98, because I remember this is a 98 movie. So if you're a teenage girl or a 12-year-old girl or whatever, in 98, I'm sure this was a great weekend at the movies. You see Titanic, and then on Saturday, see Spice World on Sunday, or see them both in the same day in theaters. It was pretty insane. I was like, wow, that was the same weekend during Titanic's long run at number one and all that. I saw it actually, I did see it this year when we were going to Newfoundland. When I was a kid, we vacationed in Canada a lot, and my family went, you'd have to take a ferry to go to Newfoundland, which is far away, like the most interesting place I've ever traveled, probably, where people are like, oh, Newfoundland and stuff. But you could pay a little bit and see movies basically in this room that just had a big TV. And I was like, it's something to do, so I watched Spice World and U.S. Marshals, I think, in the same ferry trip, if I recall correctly. I watched Spice World. I was fine with it. And I think when I got out on the same ferry, I was annoyed because right before we stopped for lunch, I left my Tamagotchi in the minivan and it died. And I was so upset I threw it off the ferry, which you're not supposed to do. So I guess I'm publicly admitting that. So it was the most 90s thing I could have said is getting mad at your Tamagotchi and watching the Spice Girls movie. But I remember sort of like, this is fine and what I expected and being okay with it at the time, to be honest with you. But I think what I find sort of interesting about the reaction to this film at the time, which I read Ebert's review, which is a half a star, and people would really go into it. But yes, this is a riff on the Hard Day's Night. The Spice Girls are like on tour. They do wacky things. It's kind of loose. It's kind of silly. But no, it is not as good as a Hard Day's Night. But I think the difference between what a Hard Day's Night meant to represent and what Spice World was meant to represent are so different that comparing them is sort of silly, because A Hard Day's Night was maybe the third time you were going to see the Beatles or something like moving around. Like you'd see them when they'd appear on Ed Sullivan, which they did several times, see them on a news report, and you saw them in the movies. So they had to make A Hard Day's Night this amazing presentation, because that's one of the few times you're going to see the Beatles that year, other than like in concert or something. And so you had to, do all that. And obviously the editing and that was made became very influential on what eventually became music videos and stuff like that, because of the quick cutting and the editing, and that's a highly influential film. The Spice World, however, is kind of very different because, like I said before, anytime you turned on MTV, they were there. I think their music videos are pretty iconic and very well filmed, whether it's, Wannabe or Say You'll Be There with the Faster Pussycat Kill Kill reference. I kind of think the everyone's thing of, oh, it's not a Hard Day's Night and these girls don't have talent, that seemed to be a big one. I disagree with that a lot. I do think their personalities make this film. I've watched this film a bunch actually, because we watched it with my daughter and like we put it on because of nostalgia and stuff, and like that. I think it's fun for what it is. But I think the major complaint actually for real is with this film is Spice Up Your Life, right? Is off the sort of Spice World album, which is not a soundtrack, just an album called that, I guess. That music video is crazy. It has them like jumping on these things in this weird Blade Runner world and all this stuff. And then you look at Spice World and it's like, when they perform, it's like 2 camera setups. And I mean, it's somebody, this guy's mainly Bob Spears, who's a television director and made That Darn Cat remake for Disney, which I'm sure you didn't know happened. So the filmmaking just wasn't there. And I think what this film, living up to A Hard Day's Night, this is such a different media climate. Comparing them isn't appropriate. But comparing it to the other images I had of the Spice Girls, which was the music videos, which were, all their stuff on media and stuff, and comparing to that, I do think this isn't as good as those things. And I don't think that's like me being, a snooty film critic or something. That's me being someone who consumed a lot of television at the time. I wish they had a more interesting director. I wish this had been like, oh, the Spice Girls made a movie, but it's actually kind of cool and it's doing all this stuff. That's not what this movie is. It's just like, if at this point for kids, it's like if your mom really liked the Spice Girls, you get to watch it when you're 7 or something, and you'll have a good time and eat popcorn. But that's all this movie kind of wants to be. So I find the comparisons of Hard Day's Night, yes, it's using the same thing. Yes, it's very similar to that. But no, it can't be A Hard Day's Night because it didn't need to be. Now, had I wished they put as much interesting film stuff in the movie, like they did in the music videos, and they got a much more talented director than just like some guy who would just shoot it. And I think they were offered a Disney deal, which they turned down, which Disney in the 90s, I'm sure, wouldn't have been. I honestly don't think it would have been better. I think that would have been way worse at the time. I think it's fine. It doesn't really annoy me. I guess it would annoy me more if I had to deal with them all the time and see them on billboards, and I think they are actually talented and fun pop singers and stuff. That's what this movie is. I just think, like, if they were going to review it and tear it apart, they should have done it like correctly. It just sounds like, oh, well, it's not as good as the Beatles. I'm like, well, I don't compare everything to Fury Road, or that's like going like, well, another one not as good as Citizen Kane. Like, come on, like that's like completely unfair. It doesn't make any sense. Like, it's a stupid comparison. Other plot wise and genre wise, I get it, but it's also probably why I think a lot of musicians didn't make movies at this point anymore. If they did, they were documentaries like what Alan Cummings was doing. And I was thinking it's interesting that the Spice Girls did make a movie, because like NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys or Britney Spears, I mean, she eventually made Crossroads, but she didn't play Britney Spears, or any of those people. They didn't make like Pearl Jam the movie. They would do documentaries. Or like Justin Bieber had several documentaries that were very successful, but there was never a Justin Bieber movie. So I kind of applaud them for actually trying to do this at a time where like it was completely not popular. Although their film was successful, to be honest, I think more successful than a lot of those documentaries. So they're probably more onto something than people realize, but I think people also realize like you're not going to live up to, your own music videos. So that was probably part of it. Sure, it doesn't, but I still think this film's fun. It's kind of what you want from this film. It's a fun, good time. You eat some popcorn in your PJs, and then the movie's done and go, that was nice. And I think sometimes you should just accept a movie for what it actually is. In the context of a lot of things, maybe this isn't as good and stuff, but I think ultimately it's hard to be really that upset at this film. And I know it tries to do a movie in the movie thing. I know it tries to do other things. It's cool seeing Richard O'Brien and Richard E. Grant and Alan Cummings, all those people, but ultimately it's just a fun little girl sleepover movie, and I think we should all just be cool sometimes about those existing. That's what it wanted to do, and that's sort of what it is. So if you have seen Spice World and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And if you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. Thank you very much for watching.